Welcome to Tech, and in one of my other videos, I went over how to take a CSV and convert that into a JSON file. And I wanted to go over a scenario where you need to take that CSV and manipulate some of the data before you turn it into a JSON file. So we have our CSV right here, and it has some student information. And as hard as we've tried to get the student administrators to give us the data in the way that we want, they just are not doing it. This is how they're giving it to us, and we need to take it and manipulate it into what we need to feed it into our API that will update the student records. So we have our first command right here, which is going to take that CSV and put it into a variable. And then we have our API URI, and we're going to put that into a variable called URI. So now what if we wanted to get the UID of all of these students to send to our API? Now, what we could do is take our for each command. We'll go for each line in CSV, and we will make a new URI. And you'd think we could put our line variable .uid to get to that specific data point within each line. But let's see what happens when we run this. Okay, so that's not really what we wanted. So we're gonna have to go back here, and it gets a little tricky by doing it this way. And I'm gonna show you an easier way here in a minute, but we could always do it this way by putting parentheses around our variable with the period to get to the specific property, and then putting another $sign on the outside to turn that back into a variable that can be read. So now if we run this command, you can see this is giving us the API URI that we want. Now that's kind of clunky, so I'm going to show you a different way that we can do this. PowerShell allows you to add strings together, which will concatenate them. So if we just use the plus sign and then type out our line.uid to get to that property, and then run this, you can see same thing, just a little bit cleaner than having to use that. But I wanted to show you this other way, the parenthesis method, because you might be in a scenario where you're building strings. You have to build a JSON object from scratch. You might need that solution, so I wanted to throw that in here. But the cleaner way to do it is just to use the plus sign to concatenate two string variables. And that's going to give us what we want to be able to build our URI for each of these lines. Now let's go back to our CSV, because the address here is one string variable, and really we need to break all these up. If we look at the documentation for our API, we need the address to be in this format right here. And so we need to split out the street, the city, the county, and the country. So the first thing that we're going to do is split the address out. And to do this, we're going to make a new variable called address split. We're going to assign that to the line variable dot address to get to that property. And then we're going to use the built-in split property, and we're going to split on comma. So we take that and now run this. You can see that it splits out our different pieces of the address, and we can use each one of those by accessing it using the array access method, which is the brackets with a number inside. It's starting at 0. So that's going to look like this, and we're going to actually take our line.address and assign that to this new array variable. There's our first one with 0 inside of the brackets. We're going to actually trim this using that built-in function right there, just to get rid of all the white space that we don't need. Then we'll go to our next line here. And same idea, we're just going to go through all of these. So now we've assigned a new array to our line.address property. And that's going to allow us to take this and turn it into a JSON object that's going to be able to be fed into our API the way that the API is expecting that. And to show you what I mean, we're going to convert this specific piece into a JSON. We're going to use our pipe there to pipe that object into convert to JSON, and we'll run that. So you can see this is in the format that we need. And if we would have converted the entire object into a JSON object, then it would have appended that address up here at the top. And we'll see this later when we convert the entire CSV turned PS object into a JSON. But before we do that, we're going to hop back to our CSV and look at these classes. And again, these classes are just in a list, and we need these to be split out so that we can feed it based on the way the API is expecting them. So if we come down here, we can see the API is wanting these in an array of objects with code and name as the two labels. So to convert this CSV into this, we're going to use a much simpler command than the one up above here. We're going to be able to do this in one pipeline. So we're going to start with our line.classes. We're going to assign that to our line.classes with a split on commas, and pipe that into the for each object command. And then we're going to build new objects with that data. So we've got our line.classes split on the commas, and then for each of those new objects, we turn that into the new object that we want. And then it assigns all of that right back into the line.classes so that we can use that in our original PS object, so we can convert it to the JSON file at the end. And we're going to do that right now. Just to show what this would look like in our API, if this was a live API, we're going to build that request. We don't have any headers, but we're going to pretend that we do. And then clear this, and then run our script. And we can see here, we've got the API endpoint with our headers, if they were there, and then our body. We've got the UID, the username, the first name, last name, house, address, the way that we are expecting it from the documentation that we had, and the classes from the way that we had the documentation. And I'm just taking this and assuming if we feed the name, the API is smart enough to fill in the code for us, which is the way that a lot of APIs work. So there we have it. We were able to take a CSV and manipulate the data to be in a way that the API is actually expecting the JSON. So we're not only just converting it into a JSON, but we're manipulating the data in between to be exactly what we want for that technology to work. Thanks for watching, and have a good day.